Have you ever had that moment like you're trying to learn English
Uh-huh.
and you want to like actually speak it?
Yeah.
You know, you can read, you can maybe even write pretty well.
Yeah.
But then when it comes time to actually open your mouth,
Right.
it's like your brain just hits a wall.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the words just won't come out.
Totally.
You're worried about every little mistake. Are you going to sound ridiculous?
It's the worst.
It is so frustrating, I think. It's such a common thing, though, for
Yeah.
people learning a new language.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's exactly who this deep dive is for.
Yeah, for anyone
If that sounds familiar.
struggling with that feeling
Yeah, so.
of wanting to speak, but just like
Yeah.
freezing up.
Yeah. And so we've been looking into this for you.
We have.
We did a deep dive into this really cool podcast.
Yeah.
All about learning English.
Uh,
And the host was sharing their own experiences and advice.
their own journey.
Yeah.
For sure.
And one of the big things that kept coming up.
One of the core ideas
Yeah.
was to stop overthinking
Yes.
and just start talking.
Yeah.
Which sounds so simple,
Right.
but it's like actually really profound.
Yeah, there's a real key, I think, to unlocking fluency.
Absolutely.
And just that little shift.
It is. It's about moving away from this like abstract idea of like
Yeah.
achieving perfect English at some point,
Right.
you
A
know,
future.
in the future.
Yeah.
And instead just being present with like
Yeah.
communicating now with the English that you have.
Yes, exactly. And I think that brings us to the
Yeah.
first thing I kind of wanted to dig into a little bit,
Yeah, let's do it.
which is this overthinking thing.
Yeah.
What is actually happening in our brains
Yeah,
when we're trying to learn another language?
totally.
Why does speaking feel so much harder
Yeah.
than understanding?
You know what's so fascinating to consider is like
Yeah.
the underlying fear.
Yeah.
You know, we're social beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're wired to want to be understood and accepted by others. And so making mistakes, especially in front of others,
Yeah.
can trigger this really primal fear
Yeah.
of not fitting in.
Right.
And so with language learning,
Yeah.
that can manifest as this fear of not being understood or even sounding ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
Like the source put it, and it's true. Like
Yeah.
putting yourself out there in a new language
Yeah.
is a very vulnerable thing.
Yes.
You're expressing yourself in this new way.
Yeah.
And it can be scary.
Right. And it's not even just like
Yeah.
making the mistake itself.
It's not just about the mistake.
It's what we think other people are thinking
It's the perception.
about us because of that mistake.
Yeah, the double whammy.
Yeah.
Of like, oh my God, I made a mistake and now they're judging me.
Totally.
You
And
know?
then that leads to another thing
Yeah.
that I think this podcast talked about
Uh-huh.
that I think is so interesting,
Right.
which is that translation thing.
Like-
Like we're constantly translate from our native language
Into English.
into English
Yeah.
before we speak.
In our heads.
Yes, in our heads.
You know, and it's a natural thing to do.
Of course. Yeah.
But it adds this like whole other layer of processing
right.
that is so unnecessary.
Yes.
You know, you're not thinking directly in English, you're constantly converting.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
Yes. It slows everything down.
It takes time. It takes mental energy.
Uh-huh.
It's like trying to have a real-time conversation
Yeah.
with a translator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And often a slow translator.
Yeah. It's like, I always think of it like,
Yeah.
it's like trying to assemble furniture
You get
when the instructions are in a different language.
Totally.
And you're having to translate each step
Yeah.
before you can do it.
Yeah. And the host of the podcast we were looking at actually shared that they
Oh, really?
experienced this too.
Wow.
So it's like such a common thing
Yeah.
to go through.
And then, of course, there's that other...
That little voice,
Yeah, that little voice inside your head.
the inner critic.
Yeah, you're not good enough yet. You're not good enough. Wait until you know more.
Wait till you're perfect.
Yeah.
Wait till you have it all figured out.
Yeah, and that just like chips away at your confidence.
Oh, it's the worst.
So we've got these like roadblocks,
Yeah.
fear of mistakes,
Fear of judgment.
this translation habit,
Uh-huh.
and then this inner critic.
Right.
So how do we actually like start to
Yeah. How do we break free?
break free of that and start getting comfortable?
Dismantle those roadblocks.
Yeah. I think one of the things that this podcast talked about
Yeah.
that was so interesting was
A shift in focus.
shifting your focus.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So it's this idea that fluency
Yeah.
comes through practice.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't come through like
Right.
achieving this perfect knowledge
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah, you don't have to be perfect
You don't have to be
to
perfect.
start speaking.
You just have to start.
Yeah.
It's like, think about how you learned your first language.
Right.
You didn't wait until you knew every grammar rule.
Right. You just started talking.
You just started talking.
Yeah.
You know, you listened to people.
Yeah.
You imitated sounds.
Mhm.
You experimented. You made a ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
And you gradually
Right.
developed the ability to speak.
Yeah. It's just like
Right.
the podcast talked about this analogy of
Yeah.
babies learning to talk.
Yeah.
They just babble.
They just babble.
They get words wrong. They get the sounds wrong.
Totally.
Mhm.
But they just keep trying.
Yeah.
And eventually they're having conversations.
Right.
You know? And it's such a good analogy because
Yeah. We need to give ourselves that permission
Yeah.
to just like experiment and
it's to babble
babble.
in English
Yeah, absolutely.
without being afraid of sounding silly.
Without being afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because that's how you learn. Exactly. And I think this podcast also made this point, which I thought was really interesting,
Uh-huh.
which is that most native English speakers
Right.
aren't sitting there like analyzing
Totally.
every little mistake that you're making.
They're not judging you.
They're not judging you.
They just want to understand you.
They just want to connect with you.
They want to connect with you.
and have a conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that's so reassuring
Yeah, it is.
to remember.
Because you don't have to be perfect
You don't have to be perfect
in order to have a conversation.
to communicate.
Yeah.
And the host of the podcast even shared a story
Oh, cool.
about a time when
Uh-huh.
they were speaking and they stumbled over their words.
Yeah.
You know, they made a mistake
Hmm.
and they were met with smiles and understanding.
Yeah.
And it just shows that, like,
Yeah.
people are more focused on
Can
connecting with you
Yeah, then like
than judging your grammar.
Yeah.
You know?
that's really reassuring.
It is.
So we've kind of talked about the roadblocks.
Yeah.
We've talked about shifting our focus.
The mindset shift.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you want to dive into some of these
Yeah, let's get
practical?
practical techniques that we can use
Let's do it.
to, like, actually start speaking more
Yeah,
and overthinking less.
absolutely.
So the first one was really interesting. It was actually like changing the way we think.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So they talk about this technique of like
Yeah.
transitioning from mentally translating to actually thinking
Yeah.
in English.
Yes.
And they suggest like narrating
Yeah.
simple everyday actions to yourself in English.
Huh?
So like, for example, if you're making coffee in the morning,
Yeah.
you just think to yourself like, okay, I'm opening the cupboard.
Yeah.
I'm taking out a mug. I'm pouring hot water.
I'm adding the coffee.
I'm making the coffee, you
Yeah.
know? And it seems really simple, but by doing that,
Yeah.
you're starting to create those direct connections in your brain.
Between actions and the English words.
Right.
So you're bypassing that translation process.
Yeah, it's like giving your brain a workout
Totally.
in English.
A little English workout.
Yeah, without the pressure
Yeah.
of an actual conversation.
Yeah. No pressure.
And then the next tip I thought was really good,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of people have trouble with, which is
Yeah.
letting go
Yeah.
of the need for perfect grammar
In the moment.
while you're speaking. Yes.
Yeah. Let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah. It's like,
It's hard.
it's so hard.
But why is that so important?
Because when you're constantly self-correcting,
Yeah.
you're hesitating, you're trying to fix every verb tense,
Mm-hmm.
every preposition you know,
Yeah.
it disrupts the flow of your speech.
Right.
And it actually can increase your anxiety.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like you're trying to paint a picture, but
Holy.
you keep stopping to analyze
Every brushstroke.
every breaststroke, and
Yeah.
it just like messes up the flow
That's
of
necessary.
everything.
And they make this really good point.
Yeah.
Which is that, like, the primary goal when you're speaking
Mm-hmm.
is to convey your thoughts and ideas,
Yes.
not to have perfect grammar.
Yeah.
The grammar review can happen later
Yeah.
when you're not under pressure,
Right.
you know, when you're not in a live conversation.
And speaking of practicing
Yeah.
without pressure,
Yes.
this podcast also had this great suggestion
Yeah.
about talking to yourself,
Oh my gosh, yes.
which sounds kind of weird
it sounds a little strange.
at first, but it's so effective.
It's such a good idea
Yeah.
because you're removing that fear of judgment.
You take the pressure off
Yeah.
completely.
So whether you're talking to yourself
Yeah.
in front of a mirror
Or just like in your room.
or just like in your car,
Yeah, when you're alone.
yeah, you're just like practicing,
Yeah.
forming sentences,
Trying out new vocabulary.
trying out new vocabulary, yeah,
And the source even gives these like funny examples.
like describing really simple things. Like,
Yeah.
I ate toast.
Yeah.
It was yummy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
So silly.
it's so silly, but it helps
Yeah.
to build that comfort and confidence
Yeah.
in using your voice in English.
I love that.
Me too.
And then there was this technique called shadowing.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Shadowing is basically
Yeah.
when you listen to a piece of English audio,
Okay.
So this could be like the podcast
Yeah.
that we were looking at. It could be a YouTube video, an
Yeah.
audiobook,
Okay.
whatever. And you try to repeat
Okay.
what you hear
Oh, so you're listening and repeating.
simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're mimicking the speaker's rhythm,
Yeah.
intonation, pronunciation.
Uh-huh.
You're like their shadow,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And the source called it a fluency shortcut
Oh, I like that.
because it helps you develop
Yeah.
a feel for the language, like how
Yeah.
sentences throw together.
Yeah.
The natural emphasis on certain words.
So it's not necessarily about like
Yeah.
understanding every single word.
Not at first.
Right. Yeah.
It's more about like
Yeah.
getting the music of the language.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're like developing this intuitive feel
Yeah.
for the rhythm and the cadence.
Yeah.
And that helps you sound so much more natural.
I like that a lot.
Me too.
Okay, so we've got the thinking in English.
Uh-huh.
We've got letting go of perfect grammar.
Yeah.
We've got talking to ourselves.
Yes.
And we've got shadowing.
Shadowing.
And then the last one was about keeping things simple.
Keeping it simple.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So they recommend starting
Mm-hmm.
with short, uncomplicated sentences,
Okay.
especially when you're first starting out.
Right.
So things like,
Yeah.
I like tea.
Yeah.
The book is on the table.
Uh-huh.
Just simple, clear sentences.
Right.
Because when you overcomplicate things,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're already feeling anxious,
Mm-hmm.
it just increases the likelihood
Yeah.
of making mistakes
Right.
and feeling discouraged.
Totally.
So start with what you know
Right.
you can say confidently
Yeah. And then you can build from there.
and build from there.
Okay. I like that a lot. And then the podcast threw down
Yeah.
this little challenge.
A little challenge.
Yeah, which was the 30-second speaking challenge.
I love this challenge.
Can you tell everybody about that?
Okay. So the challenge is to speak in English
Okay.
for 30 seconds
All right.
without stopping.
30 seconds nonstop.
30 seconds nonstop.
Okay.
The topic can be anything you want. It could be your favorite food,
Uh-huh.
what you did today, a dream you have,
Cool.
whatever,
Anything.
anything.
Okay.
The point is just to keep talking.
Yeah, just to keep those words coming out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the host of the podcast even gave an example
Yeah.
talking about pizza,
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
So they were like, pizza, it's cheesy, it's hot.
yeah.
You know, it's a Friday night tradition. My favorite crust is whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about like
Right.
delivering a perfect speech.
Yeah.
It's just about getting comfortable
Right.
with the act
With the act of speaking.
of speaking English continuously.
Yes. And I think they really encourage you listening to
Yeah.
just give it a try.
Just try it.
Even if you stumble,
Yeah.
even if you feel like you're not making perfect sense.
Totally.
Like, it's okay.
All part of the process.
You keep going.
Yeah. And even laugh it off.
Yeah.
You know, if you make a mistake,
Yeah.
it's fine.
It's all part of learning.
It's all about growth.
I like that.
It's like building that muscle memory.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting used to the sensation of English words actually coming out of your mouth
Yeah.
without that internal pause
And out that pause.
for translation or correction.
Okay, so we've got these like really helpful techniques.
Practical techniques.
Yeah, but I think this podcast also spent some time on,
The foundation.
yeah, the power of mindset.
Mindset is everything.
Yeah.
It really is.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So they made this really important point
Yeah.
that confidence
Uh-huh.
often comes after
Oh,
speaking, not before.
Before. That is really interesting.
Yeah, so even if you feel nervous
Yeah.
or unsure,
Yeah.
just start speaking.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Take that first step.
And I think that kind of leads into this idea
Yeah.
of reframing mistakes.
Reframing mistakes
So instead of viewing them as failures.
as something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Totally.
The podcast suggested seeing them as,
As proof
Yeah.
that you're actually trying,
yes,
that you're learning.
that you're putting in the effort.
Exactly. And the host even shared
Oh, cool.
that they used to cringe
Yeah.
at their own mistakes.
Yeah.
But now they see them as like
Little wins.
little wins,
Yeah.
little victories
I like that.
on the path to fluency.
Yeah. And then another thing.
Another mindset shift.
Yeah, another mindset thing that I think is really important is to stop comparing yourself to others.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Like everyone's language learning journey.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And everyone's journey is so unique.
It is unique.
Yeah.
It's at your own pace.
Yeah.
With your own challenges.
And the podcast said the important question to ask yourself is,
Am I better today
am I better today than I was yesterday?
than I was yesterday?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Don't worry about anyone else.
Yeah.
Just focus on your own progress.
Yeah, that's so healthy.
It is.
I love
It's
that.
about focusing on your own growth.
Yes. And then the last mindset thing
Okay.
was to like lean into discomfort.
Yes.
So that feeling of awkwardness,
The cringe.
the cringe that you might feel when you're speaking English,
That's actually where the growth is happening.
that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
It's like when you're a little bit outside your comfort zone, that your brain is like
Working.
working, it's adapting,
Yeah.
it's improving.
But if you're avoiding that discomfort,
Yeah,
you're basically avoiding growth.
you're avoiding growth.
Yeah.
You're staying stuck.
Okay, so to bring it all together,
Let's bring it home for our listeners.
yeah, the big message from this deep dive into this English language learning podcast is that you need to stop letting
The fear,
the fear of making mistakes,
the fear of judgment,
and the habit of overthinking keep you stuck.
keep you from speaking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fluency isn't about
Perfection.
being perfect.
It's about practice.
Yeah,
It's about progress.
Yeah.
It's about consistency.
yeah,
It's about showing up,
yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable,
Even when it's hard.
even when it's awkward.
Yes. And using these techniques.
Yes, these practical tools.
Yeah, to get those words flowing.
Get the English flowing
Yeah.
out of your mouth.
Yeah, and this podcast ended with this
Yeah.
call to action.
A challenge.
Yeah, and we want to echo that for you.
We do.
We want you to make a conscious effort
Yeah.
to speak English today,
Today.
even if it's just for a little bit.
Even if it's just a few words.
Even if it's just to yourself, to your cat, to your dog, to the
Look
mirror.
in a mirror,
Yeah.
wherever you are.
Just start speaking.
Just make those sounds
Yeah.
come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a good way to start
Yeah.
is to actually just say out loud right now,
I love it.
I can do this.
Say it with me, everybody.
Yeah,
I can do this.
I can do this.
You are intelligent.
You are capable.
You are capable.
And achieving fluency is possible.
Yes, it is possible.
It's within your grasp.
It's about embracing the journey.
Embracing the journey.
Yeah, and accepting the imperfections.
Yeah, imperfections are part of the process.
They're proof that you're growing
And recognizing the power that comes from
by starting.
just starting to speak.
Yeah.
And here's a final thought
Okay, I'm ready.
for you to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how your life might change.
Yeah.
Imagine how many more people
Yeah.
you
yes.
could connect with
From all over the world.
from all over the world.
Yeah.
Imagine how many more opportunities
Uh-huh.
might open up to you
Yeah.
if you just shifted your focus
From perfection.
from perfection
connection
to connection,
Yeah.
from perfect grammar
to communication.
to communicate. It's a
Yeah.
huge difference.
It is.
And it can really change your life.
It can change your life.
And it all starts
with that first word.
with that first
With
word.
that first step.
Yes, you got this.
You got this.